Hi, I'm Andrea from Waves of Harmony.
And I'm Greg from Grief and Trauma Support.
We're here today to give you a little bit of background on the influences behind how we formed our workshop Being with Grief.
We just thought it'd be a good opportunity to give you a bit of a sense of the influences, the concepts, ideas that are really woven all the way through that workshop.
That's right, and these sort of came about from Greg and I having many conversations, reading some seminal literature from a long time ago, and also recent literature and books that have sort of talked about this and illustrated it really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it does sort of cover quite a, like you said, a long history, but there's also some more really interesting recent material that's coming out around some of these ideas.
That's right. So this workshop of Being with Grief will be sort of our sort of version of what we've taken from these different points of learning. So this is largely focused on empathic listening, and in a sense there's a couple precursors to that we've kind of come across, and one of them begins with Eugene Gendlin, who started this whole sort of movement of a thing called focusing.
And the use of focusing and the idea of that all human beings have a felt sense in them as being a sort of key part.
And what I love about that is that we are being with grief, and what we're offering in our 2-day workshop is actually time to sit with grief of our own, or grief of working with people who have grief. Well, I think everybody has grief, but it's more than just expressing it in a counseling talk sense. It's more about that really feeling into it.
Yeah, that very embodied sense, that the idea that Eugene Gendlin talks about is that we have this felt sense that often shows up in the body in a way. There's a lot more to it, but it shows up in the body. And one of the things that he mentioned was his idea of the interaction comes first. So not so much what we're intending to say or coming in with an agenda, but the focus on how we are with each other. That always comes first, because that's already picking up on this felt sense with each other. The moment you sit down with someone, you start to get a feeling about something.
Yes. And even though Gendlin's work goes all the way back to the 1970s, and he was sort of psychologist in Chicago, I think it was, and more recently, I think Greg Madison in the UK actually does a series of podcasts called The Living Process. And when you think about those words, living process, the idea of sensing things is actually constantly changing and living and evolving all the time. So it's this sort of feeling of we can't actually get the words out quick enough to what's actually being experienced in us as we're being with.
And interestingly, following on from that grief is a part of our living process as well. That, you know, we are always in the living process, and grief is a part of that, and it's also part of that living process that's happening.
That's right. That's right. I think then there's sort of a stepping stone from that idea to someone named Marshall Rosenberg, who was similar to Gendlin in similar time and era and place, but took more attention to feelings and needs of people, and the communication or the interactions between people being nonviolent, and actually being sort of looking at or feeling or sensing or trying to tap into that a little bit more than just I don't know how to.
And I think a key part of the non-violent part that I've always found fascinating is it's the feelings and needs, and it's also not leaving things out that are important. That's the non-violent part, is not pushing things down or putting things aside, but actually leaving room for the feelings that are there and the needs that might be there, and not being sort of violent to ourselves or others by sort of telling ourselves, no, I shouldn't be feeling that, or that's an uncomfortable feeling, but having more an openness. So it has a lot of resonance with Eugene Gendlin's work, but a different angle and a different sort of way of approaching it. Very much around understanding what are my feelings around a situation, but then also what are my needs, that then flows through to, okay, how do I work towards having those needs sort of met, but without suppressing or pushing anyone else aside or putting ourselves aside. Yeah.
But I think the tricky part of that, and this is something, again, in this workshop we'll be able to speak to a little bit more, is that sense of we're still actually being honest with our own feelings and needs.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for people to do because they feel like it's going to affect somebody else. But actually, by not doing that, sometimes it creates a larger effect. So that's the irony there. So, and then I think another big influence for us has been Alan Rolfes, who recently wrote a book about listening. And of course, because empathic listening is such a big part of what we're going to be going through, he actually quoted in his book, he said, "We live more than we think, more than we say."
Yeah.
And that whole idea of the living process.
Living comes first. Yeah. Yeah.
And empathic listening is the activator for the speakers checking inwardly with the felt. Go home and think about that one.
Yeah.
So again, it's about just if we're thinking about being effective counselors or therapists, we're listening, but what's the quality of our listening?
Yeah.
And actually, what does it involve? So this is something that we're talking about, not just that hearing and repeating or reflecting back, but that whole idea of the forming of the real sense.
Yeah, and I think also the sense of a person who's experiencing grief or in our own grief, to listen and be with each other in a way that allows the unfolding of that grief into living forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that unfolding is important in grief as well, because we know grief sometimes needs time and space and someone from the outside to actually be there.
To be witnessing and companioning and be with that. It often, and this is part of this idea of empathic listening, that the presence of the listener often supports that unfolding in the person who's being listened to. And
as Gendlin even said, it can just by speaking or sort of talking that, it can provide opportunity for a shift. And
sort of clarifying and getting clear around what something is and what it needs.
So these are all sort of ideas and concepts that we'll be giving attention to in our two-day workshop. It sounds really simple, listening, but this is not listening the way most of us were taught in our uni classes or our degrees, or even in a lot of workshops that are out there that do go through listening. But this is sort of our version of empathic listening, but taking it to sort of a different place that we've found is other people have found actually really helpful as well.
Yeah.
And then also sort of supporting that with other modalities that we'll be offering as well, alongside that are just going to be a really sort of supportive space, a really welcoming space, and we'll be telling you more about what's entailed in the workshop exactly in another video.
Absolutely.
So
yes, warmly invite you, if you hear about this workshop and have an opportunity to come along and have a chance to be with us and for us to be with you.
Exactly. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you there.